Quentin Tarantino did not present the Pulp Fiction timeline in chronological order, but the movie's three stories are clearly intertwined. In order to properly weave the Pulp Fiction timeline's unorthodox storytelling together, Quentin Tarantino gathered a stellar ensemble cast. One Pulp Fiction storyline follows two hitmen, Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta, whose day quickly descends into chaos. Another story follows Travolta's character taking his boss's wife, Uma Thurman, out only for her to overdose. Lastly, in the Pulp Fiction timeline, there's the boxer, Bruce Willis, who, in a twisted turn of events, finds himself fighting his way out of the basement of a pawnshop owner. Pulp Fiction's original 3-hour cut was eventually shaved down into the 2 to 1/2 hour movie that revolutionized gangster cinema. The Pulp Fiction timeline's three stories are divided across 7 non-linear episodes, told over the course of 2 days. Although this greatly factors into why the characters and stories are so memorable, it can be difficult to make sense of the stakes, context, and chronology of the succeeding events. In the spirit of better understanding arguably Quentin Tarantino's greatest and most iconic film, here are the stories of Pulp Fiction in chronological order. Pulp Fiction takes place across 2 days. The movie shows an incredibly chaotic 48 hours. Butch and Fabian on a motorcycle in Pulp Fiction. Taking a look at the Pulp Fiction timeline, it becomes clear that the events of the movie, aside from the Captain Coons flashback, take part over the course of just 2 days. The first day is the most eventful of the story with all the characters participating in the story. It begins with Jules and Vincent's cheeseburger conversation on the way to their hit. After accidentally killing Marvin and dealing with the messy cleanup of it all, Vincent and Jules go to the diner for breakfast only to run into Pumpkin and Honey Bunny. The first day in the Pulp Fiction timeline is barely later than morning when Vincent and Jules deliver the case to Marcellus Wallace. This is where Butch is introduced into the story, discussing his fight with Marcellus. It is also where Jules leaves the timeline of the story as he presumably tells Marcellus that he quits. After leaving Marcellus's club, Vincent goes to score some heroin before picking up Mia for their drug-fueled date. That evening is also when Butch decides not to throw his fight and goes on the run after killing his opponent in the ring. The second day of the Pulp Fiction timeline is far easier to follow. While there were a number of storylines going on simultaneously in the first day, most of those storylines end by the end of the day, leaving Butch's storyline as the only one the movie follows into the second day. The day begins with Butch waking with Fabian in the hotel room, going to get his watch, killing Vincent, running into Marcellus, and getting captured by Zed. The final moment in the Pulp Fiction timeline to wrap up the second day is Butch driving off with Fabian on Zed's motorcycle. The prelude to the Gold Watch flashback takes place decades before the rest of Pulp Fiction. Captain Coons with the watch in Pulp Fiction. While the movie opens with Pumpkin and Honey Bunny robbing a diner, the Pulp Fiction plot in chronological order begins with the Captain Coons flashback. Captain Coons, Christopher Walken, time may be brief, but he makes an impression. In this now iconic flashback scene, the Pulp Fiction timeline briefly goes back to the mid-70s, showing a young Butch sitting in front of the TV. His mother enters with Coons, a man who knew Butch's father when they were both in a Vietnam War POW camp, and lets Coons take over.